This is HexRush, a fully 3D printed strategy board game for 2 to 4 players. In this video, I'll briefly explain the process of creating this game, how it's played, and what I learned along the way. Stick around until the very end for an exclusive reveal on how you can be one of the first people to play and experience HexRush. So the game is contained inside this box, and the box is approximately 21 by 25 centimeters, with a very thin profile of just 2 centimeters. In freedom units, that's about 8 and 10 inches. Let's see what's inside. So we slide this lid off, and we have a manual. We have 2 game board pieces. We have 2 dice. And then we have a bunch of player pieces. Before we assemble everything, let's take a look at the manual. So the game is for 2 to 4 players, and it takes about 40 to 60 minutes to play one game. I have marked this game for 8+, because it does require you to be able to do some simple math addition. For example, 3 plus 5. And that can be challenging for people under 8. So first, we have some text. This is just theme text to set the mood. And then we have all the contents, just to make sure that we have everything, and we do. On the next page, we have the setup and some basic gameplay rules. So this is the main spread, and the spread that you should have open when you first start to play the game. And then we have some more rules, and a QR code that leads to my website, and a thank you note. Well, let's get back to the main spread. So the setup and the gameplay is quite simple, and you'll be up and playing very quickly, which was something that I was aiming for. HexRush is intended to be a fast game to learn, a family game that can be enjoyed by most ages, but with a little bit more depth and strategy to it, so that the grown-ups don't get bored. It's basically a combination of Ludo and backgammon. So how do you play it? Well, first let's set up the game board. So we have these 2 mirrored game board pieces with different colors, and we just need to put them like that. And this is our game board. Then we have these pieces, and these go into the start base. So this is the start base with all the numbers. We also have these 2 white pieces, and this is Friendly Steve. I will talk about him later, but for now he goes over here. The objective of the game is to move all 4 of your pieces all the way around the game board like this into your own home base. And the first person who moves all 4 pieces into their home base wins. You start by rolling 2 dice. If you get a 2 or a 1, you can successfully exit your home base onto the corresponding number. So I got 1, 2, which means I can place one of my pieces on the number 2. Let's say I am yellow. I got another 2, which means I can place 1 piece here. You can spend your dice roll on any piece, but dividing, subtracting, or passing on your roll is not allowed. If no legal moves can be made, you forfeit your turn. If you've played backgammon, you are familiar with these roll and move rules. You can capture opponents if you fit. So let's say I'm a green player and I roll a 2. Well, I can move 1, 2, and then you send the other player back to their home base. If you land on your own piece, you do not capture yourself. Instead, you're protected. So now you can't be captured. The golden rule is if you fit, you can stay, and if you don't fit, you can't stay. I am the green player and I have 2 pieces here, and then yellow player comes along. Well, you can't capture this player, but you can jump over this tile. So that is the basic gameplay, very simple, but I have added some twists and turns to make the game more interesting. First off, let's meet Friendly Steve. This is your trusted ally in HexRush. Land next to Friendly Steve and he will be attached to you, and the next time you move, he will push you an extra 3 steps. He will also protect you from being captured, since nobody can land next to you. Picking up Friendly Steve is not optional, but you're free to leave him whenever you want. Just walk away. Don't worry, he won't be sad. So if you like to move fast and win quickly, make sure to partner up with Friendly Steve. However, being friends with Friendly Steve comes with some risk. So there are 2 tiles on the game called the Storm. And if you land on these 2 tiles, you're granted a special opportunity to harness the magical power of the storm. You can immediately roll the 2 dice again. So let's say I am the red player and I roll a 2. Then I can use the 2 to walk into the storm. And then I immediately get another roll of the die. And if I roll an 8 or more, I gain the power to teleport this game piece onto any Friendly Steve on the board. So I can choose to teleport here, or if there's another player attached to Friendly Steve, I can capture him and teleport to that Friendly Steve. So it is my choice. And this was perfect because I'm right outside my base. However, if you roll a 7 or lower, so I roll a 7, I move back 1 step. And my turn ends. And that's how you play HexRush. So when I started out designing this game, I didn't know much about board game design. But I have done a lot of research on what makes a game fun, and I think I've managed to incorporate some elements in this game that is quite entertaining. So I watched this YouTube video that talked a lot about tabletop game randomness. And it's very interesting, I highly recommend it. And to summarize it, we humans like games with randomness where we have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen, but we could be wrong. Basically, we want to have some sense of control when we play, but we also like to be surprised.
You have a very high chance of a small change, but a much smaller chance of a big change.
And I've tried to incorporate this into the game. For example, we have Friendly Steve, and he's very predictable in the way that you always know that he's going to push you 3 tiles at the end of your movement. But you never know when someone is going to enter the storm and capture you. And send you back to your base. Friendly Steve is a classic push your luck mechanism, where you want to be attached to him for as long as possible to get the extra steps, but not long enough that someone captures you. This also adds a tactical element to your decision making. How long will you walk with him? When do you leave him behind? Is it worth the extra risk? If you'd like to have some math behind it, so you can make an educated guess, here it is. If you're inside a storm, rolling an 8 plus with 2 dice will happen about 42% of the time. It's going to happen about 15 out of 36 times. And this was a number that I got from a lot of play testing. But if you're 1 step outside the storm, you have to first roll a 1 to enter the storm, and then you have to roll an 8. And this chance is only 13%. So I have to roll a 1. Oh, I I did. I have to enter, and then I have to roll an 8 or higher. And I didn't succeed, so I walk back one step. So when you know the math behind it, you can make an educated guess. But of course, there are 2 friendly Steve on the board, and you can't really know which one the blue player wants to teleport to. In some cases, you can. Of course, blue player wouldn't want to teleport here. He would want to teleport here. Or for example, if you're very close to their base, he'd want to teleport here. But in some cases, you won't know. Let's say the game board looks like this, where the yellow player is clearly winning because they already have 2 pieces in their home base. Maybe the blue player will choose to kick out the yellow player instead because they're in the lead. So this mechanic makes it so that in order to play well, you have to keep an eye on all players' positions and judge accordingly when you make your shots. Sure, relying on dice makes this game somewhat luck-based, but the way you spend your dice roll and the choices you make in regards to Friendly Steve and the Storm makes this game skill-based as well. You will consistently win against your opponents if there is a large skill gap between you. The game is best played with 4 people. There are just much more encounters, captures and turns. It is possible to play as 3 players as well, but I have noticed that this can make the game a little bit uneven, because there is one player, blue in this case, that won't be chased by another player. If you're only 2 people, I recommend you play as all 4 colors. And if you want a shorter game, you can play as 2 colors, but on the opposite sides of each other. So while the game is quite simple, it only takes a few minutes to learn all of the rules, it is still extremely unpredictable. You almost never know who's going to win until the very end. And this is primarily due to the Storm and its swap function. A common scenario is that Friendly Steve is very often left outside a player's base because you can't bring him inside your home base. And this can serve as a very quick shortcut onto your base. So if you're behind, let's say I'm green, I can walk into the Storm and I can teleport to Friendly Steve. And then when it's my turn, I can just walk into the base. So this is a strategy that you can try and plan for, and if you're lucky, you will be able to quickly turn the game around. I have given a lot of thought about Friendly Steve's starting position. The starting position is outside blues and green's base. And I generally like to call these defenders and these colors attackers. And that is because the green and the blue player, they have quick access to Friendly Steve when the game begins. But the yellow and red player, they have quicker access to the Storm. So these 2 players usually use the Storm first and try to swap onto the Friendly Steve. Then as the game goes on, people will leave Friendly Steve in all random places. The Friendly Steve starting position is well thought out, and I have playtested this many times. But if you play many times, you can also switch the positions around, which creates some variance in your gameplay. Now let's talk a little bit about how this game is made. So I have printed everything in PLA on the Bambu A1, mostly with a 0.4mm nozzle. In total, the game takes about 500 grams of filament and about 14 to 16 hours to print. So it's not too bad. I mean, with one printer you can make a full game in one day for about $10 worth of filament. There is 0 assembly required. Everything is print in place without any supports. This very detailed version of Friendly Steve is printed with a 0.2mm nozzle and a 0.06mm layer height. It's really not necessary, and I've made just regular white pieces as well. But I think small things like this having a smiley face, it kind of adds to the overall theme. I did 3D print 2 die as well, but as you may know, 3D printing die is somewhat problematic. I have tried to remove the same amount of filament in the holes. So if there's 6 holes, it's very, very shallow. And if we have 1 hole, or let's say 3 hole, it's a little bit deeper. And I have found that these die are somewhat fair. But of course, they're never going to be as fair as regular die. But other than the die, everything in this print is very smooth because I designed it to be minimalistic and simple. The clearance gap on the sliding lid is about 0.15 on both sides, which works very well for me. So as you can see, it's a small gap here, which makes it possible to slide it in and out. There's also a small ledge here. The manual is printed on 2 A4, double-sided, which I just stapled together. So I know that when I opened the box, I displayed everything very neatly, but after you played a game for 40 minutes and you want to put it away, you don't want to do a puzzle. But you don't have to. You can just put this in, take all the pieces, just throw them in like this, and make sure they're in these holes here. Then take the die and put them here, and let's take the manual, put it here, and then slide it. Now I have worked very hard on this project. I have done many prototypes, a lot of research, and I probably played a dozen games by now to make sure that everything works. I would appreciate it if you leave a like on this video and let me know what you think of the game. You can buy the STL files for this print, including the files for the manual, on my website frankadrian.art. But keep in mind that the license you get from my website is only for personal use. If you'd like to print this and sell, you need to join my Patreon for an active merchant license. By joining my Patreon, you'll also get access to my Photoshop files where I made the manual, so that you can customize it with your own logo and with your own branding. So of course you don't want it to say FA here, and you want a different QR code. And this can be a good product to print and sell all year around. The minimalistic and simple design means that the production cost is only around $10, and with average board game prices of $25 to $50, this product has great profit potential. If you don't have a printer but still want one of these, you can check my website, and if you're lucky, they might be in stock. So I have made a couple of copies to make sure that the print is smooth, and these are the only ones I will sell for a while. All the links are down in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care and see you soon. But you don't have to. Fun!